My name is Courtney Mark, actually Courtney Mark, and I grew up in a small town called Carefree, Arizona. My father was an architect. I grew up with architects, so I obviously went more towards the arts. I moved to New York in 1999. I went to Pratt Institute, where I was a fine artist, sculptor, painter. Went through my first year and decided I have to do something that might make some money, and thought, well, horrible at math, so no architecture for me, but interior architecture, I think I can do that. And I was finishing my thesis, working in a bar down on Beacon Street in the West Village, and had a regular, and his name was Abe Wadwa. And one day I went outside for a break, smoked a cigarette. He came outside, asked me, can I have a cigarette? I said, you don't smoke, Abe. He said, well, I want a cigarette. And he's like, I've known you for about 4 months. What do you do, Courtney? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to Pratt. I'm in art school. And he's like, okay, your major? And I said, oh, interior design. And I said, Abe, what do you do? And he said, I'm a lighting designer. Didn't know that you could be a lighting designer when I was in college, and jokingly just said to him, hey, you need an intern? And he's like, actually I do, I've just opened my own firm. So long story short, the next day went to show my portfolio, and he said, hey, you're hired, you're my new intern. And when I graduated, he said, so what are you going to do? Are you going to go work for Gensler? And I said, no way. And he said, well, I think you've got something for lighting. And I said, don't I need a lighting master's? And he said, no, because he was a professor at the Lighting Research Center in Troy. He said, I will teach you. You will learn in the field. That's an amazing way to understand what you're doing. So worked for him for about 8.5 years between New York and India. Did a couple projects. At that time I was doing a couple projects in Dubai. And in 2008 we were sitting at a bar again. And he posed a question to me. He said, hey, would you move to India and start another office in Delhi? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'm 28. What do I have to lose? Fell off the bar stool and decided that we would make that move. It was 2008, and that was a couple more months before the economy crashed. And so I spent 2 years in India, and my first development into the world of hospitality. I did the lighting design for Alila Diwa in Goa, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth on hospitality, started understanding all the brand standards, the difference between different operators and how they work and manipulate, and realized that I wanted to further specialize and focus on hospitality. So in 2010, I had a little bit enough of Delhi. If you've been to India, it's chaos theory on earth, but amazing. And said, oh, I want to go back to New York. I miss New York. And so I moved back to New York. Worked for Abe for about another year, and then decided that, let me further specialize in hospitality and get a little bit out of more of the corporate structure. I don't want to review people's timesheets. I just want to go back to being an artist. So decided to make the shift after 8.5 years, which was a long time. It's like a divorce. So I met Ken Ventry in 2010. Went for an interview with him, and he had decided to split from Focus Lighting and started to open his own design studio with what now is his partner, Livia Liu. They needed an international lighting designer. They got a hotel in Costa Rica called Andas Papagayo, and me coming from India and them only being New York based, they were like, we really don't know how to design for this kind of international work. You're the perfect person to kind of come in and do that. I was thrilled because then I was getting to do hospitality in another country again and back to international, which is what I think you kind of get the international bug. So that was great, and I worked for them for 2 years, finished Andas Papagayo, and came to a point again where I realized that And I remember that day because it was -10. I was standing on my stoop in the morning. It was pitch black, New York. Everything's frozen. My stoop steps are frozen, dark. And I just sat there that morning and was like, I cannot live here next year. And that started my journey to, come back as an international lighting designer. So I went down to visit my sister in Atlanta, Georgia. And in that process, I connected to Ted Pereira, who is CD+M, managing director. And he said, kind of, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. I kind of need a break. I need to figure out what I feel like doing. Maybe I won't do lighting anymore. He's like, well, where are you now? And I was like, well, I'm in transition. I'm going to go visit a friend in Florida and then go back to New York. And he's like, well, can I have a call? Sure. Spoke to him. He said, why don't you come for an interview in transit? We'll also be in Florida, him and Sean Whitaker, who is one of the principals of the LA office. Had that interview, and basically he convinced me that he said, where are you going to go? I said, well, I think I'm going to go towards Australia. It's a good lighting community there. It's warm, multi-versatile, area. And he said, no. Australia's not doing well at this moment. I said, okay. He said, well, why don't you do Dubai? And we are looking for a hospitality-centric designer. So long story short, before I knew it, it was three weeks later, I had moved my whole entire apartment from Brooklyn to Connecticut into storage, and I was on a plane to Dubai. So I was brought here to start the hospitality studio for CD+M, which was what I've been doing for the last 5.5 years now. Yeah. The projects that I'm working on here, I've designed about 28 hotels in the last 5.5 years, all different phases. We're still going through concept in some of them. Some of them have been on hold. The structure here is a little different, but I focus primarily on hospitality. It's where I love to design spaces for people to come and relax and escape their reality. And I realized that Dubai has become a destination for that. The tourist market has increased a lot. When I came here, I designed a small restaurant in Jumeirah renovation, and it was called Perry and Blackwelder's Smokehouse. So it's all about American barbecue. Designed it almost on a napkin at first. Then that became the first project that I completed in the region. Won 2 awards for that, Lux Award and Lightman Elise Award for F&B. And then just had carried on that whole idea. And I work from everywhere from Emar to IFA to Marriott. A new project that is exciting that I just finished that I'm looking forward to is the new Chetty in Ras Al Had, which was an exciting project for me because it was that opportunity to do almost zero ambient, very, very low ambient. You have about a 20-minute drive, your eye adaptation by the time that you arrive in that kind of area with full dark sky, right? The Chetty Inn I'm on right now is stunning. It's a beautiful property, but there's so much light pollution that you can't even really enjoy it or relax at night. And so that was a very exciting project because I could do low ambient, and the whole idea of it is about gathering around a campfire and making people feel warm. And so we're going, we did about 2,200 K. It's very, very warm, lots of candlelight. It's also a turtle nesting site, which is exciting because, that's rare for this region, I guess. Oman has a lot of these sites. So it was a fun and challenging project, and trying to make a bunch of engineers understand that we don't need to submit lux level calculations for this kind of property was fun, because I basically carried around a lux meter when we did a site walk at the Chetty now. I said, how many lux do you think this space is? And they're all like, 200, 300. And I was like, we're at 50. Is it comfortable? They're all like shocked. And I said, yeah, how comfortable do you feel? How much can you see? And so it was like this, I think, aha moment for some of these engineers that really they're like, well, where's the lux calculation? You need this grid of downlights. And, it's not about, we don't start with lux calculations. We do them as a check, but that's not the primary focus. I think that a role is crucial to the design process, that we follow architecture and interiors always, but if you have a beautiful space and it has beautiful materials and the daylight is fantastic, and if you cannot see those materials at night and they're not illuminated and people aren't comfortable, people won't come back. Getting involved in lighting design for me and specializing for that was what I just love to do, right? But it wasn't only that, it's that I think that architects, interior designers, they think about lights as lights in the ceiling and table and wall sconces, and don't really see all the surfaces that can be illuminated. And it's not just a downlights lighting a floor, it's the vertical surfaces, the ceiling surfaces, the integration in architectural detailing and what the possibilities of that are, and really giving them a layer that they don't understand, which is technology and how controls play a huge role in how we manipulate lighting design, how you can save in cost. Something I always run for all of our clients is a return of investment chart on any control system that we are putting forward, and that is so they understand that, yes, okay, you're going to spend this on the front end, but you're going to pay for your control system in 3 to 5 years of running the property. I think lighting design, like furniture design and industrial design, it's its own thing, and it's part of a huge team that create a space and a property, right? It's it takes an army, right? It's not one person, right? And not one person knows everything. I think your phone is connected. Technology is all connected to your phone at this point. I think that it's a great thing, but it's also a very detrimental thing to just the way that people experience space. Technology, everybody talks about Dolly, and actually this was interesting. I was at the Lighting Summit last week in Dubai, and there was a panel of mostly interior designers and one lighting designer, and that question was asked is, what are these new technologies, right? And one of the interior designers said, well, it's not new technology, but Dolly control system, right? And I'm sitting there with a good friend of mine, Regina, and Rodrigo, who are also lighting designers in this region, and we look all at each other and we're like, Dolly is not a system, it's a dimming protocol. So, for us, that's where we weigh in and say, no, there are so many different ways that you can use this technology, and it's not a system, it's a plug in a massive umbrella of things that works well. I think that people want to manipulate on their own phone. They don't want to have to go into a guest room and figure out what button is what anymore. I think it's come almost full circle in the last 7 years. Everybody was like, iPad control, and I'm going to provide an iPad for these guests, and if I as a lighting designer cannot walk into a hotel and figure out how to turn the lights on and off, then I think it's failed, right? I mean, you travel all over Europe and you go to these amazing boutique hotels, and it's very simple. Switch on, switch off, and maybe there's dimming, maybe, and it's really about letting people manipulate their own space comfortably. And that's not the tech savvy generation only. That's everybody from all spectrums of life from all over the world. And how do you make that easy for people to use and utilize? So I've gone back to less control on that part, and actually onboard dimmers, right? Let people just design their own space, turn off their own lights, allow them to dim. Yeah, that's great, but let it be more tactile. I have this crazy idea. I think I've had it for, the last 10 years, and I would like to be able to buy property, 10, very distinct villas, but more of like a retreat for artists. And I think that it's not, they have all these health and wellness resorts and retreats for health and wellness, and that's fantastic, like Kamalaya and Koh Samui, and that is a beautiful place, but it's just health and wellness. I think there should be retreats for artists and designers to be able to explore those different possibilities and go on vacation in their own way, because we go with our journals, our notebooks, our sketch pads, and I'd like to kind of create that kind of space that is a destination for the art community to go and relax. So if I had a lot of money to buy this kind of property, that would be on its beautiful little alcove with its private beach, and just filled with things that inspire us. Yeah. I would say the project I am most proud of is Alila Diwa in Goa. And that is because I was still quite young in the hospitality world at that time. And it's the first time I did a rendering in Photoshop where I have the rendering in Photoshop and I have the actual photo, and it's the same, right? And so I'm proud of that because it was what I saw in my head, and what I rendered in that visual was exactly what was produced. And so I think that was that aha moment of like, this is why these visuals are done. And when it's just a rendering company that does it and not a lighting designer, they see it as downlight, scallop on the wall, flash, and we're like low glare, like shielding, all these things. And I think it's really important that's why we take their visuals and we actually make them feel how they actually will look, right? And that's something in a lighting designer's head, and differentiates between lighting designer, interior designer, renderer, and architect, I guess. Yeah. I would say, honestly, the biggest challenge was moving here. Working in India, everyone, I thought, oh God, you can work in India, you can work anywhere. Dubai is a very dominantly male market. And I think my biggest challenges here were interfacing with a certain type of personality that I wasn't used to, and how to maintain your professionalism in that situation without getting angry or getting flustered or frustrated. And that has been a huge learning curve for me at this time in my career. But now it's the famous thing, inshallah, in the Middle East, right? You just have to embrace that, because that's the thinking philosophy behind it. And so things that drive me crazy about this place are, in India it was always like, you never really know if it was yes or a no. You're like, is that yes, is that no? I mean, and it took me a couple years to figure that out. And here, my, pet peeve of the Middle East is when somebody says it's not possible. And, why everything is possible. And that's the most, aggravating moment, I think, that I have here, when someone's like, sorry, not possible. And then it's like, what? Are you crazy? Of course it's possible. You just have to figure out how to do it, and so, yeah, I guess that's it. I would say that Rita Ganlami, she is ex-wife of Abe, but she was very influential. She was a very big part of the company, and but behind the scenes, right? And I think that there's always a very strong woman behind a man. I have that, philosophy, I guess, or that's the thinking. And she's been there through all of my journeys, throughout my path through lighting, and she's a dear friend. So thank you very much, Rita, for being so supportive in all of these crazy moves and points in my life. And she's a very talented furniture designer, has a company called Farrago Design that's really just out of the box, and she's a very creative soul. So easy. I mean, light inspires me because that's the way that I see life, right? I'm inspired by darkness. I'm inspired by daylight. It's a changing evolution, and the LED world has astonished me. I started with regular T5s, and coves were not LED strip light, and I actually was looking at this old book with Bill Johnson, who's the director of CDM Dubai, and yesterday we were kind of laughing because it was like, well, remember when we used to have to stagger T5s in a cove, and that was the way that you actually lit a cove? And the other night was on Barco's website for something, because I'm trying to mimic a T5 with a red color sleeve from Roscoe and make it look exposed, but it has to be LED and it has to be dolly. And so it was that, so it inspires me because there's just so much potential for growth continuously. I mean, even from the moment I got here to the moment now, I don't design anything with halogen or incandescent or T5s, or, I mean, God, dare I say, cold cathode, it's crazy. But it's interesting how it's changed, but it's also, the challenge is then how do you adapt to that change, and then how do you fix all these installation nightmares that happen with LED now that used to, we kind of had it resolved 16 years ago when I started, figured out how to detail all these things, and now there's just a constant challenge of trying to figure out how each of these new technologies and new lamps, and how's that fit in, and how do we integrate that properly and not have flashing in the floor and not seeing the light, or do you want to see the light, so yeah, what's that? Unfortunately, I've always worked for male bosses, right? And not unfortunately, like it's a bad thing, but it's just, I've noticed that. And when you guys came and asked me to do this, it was this aha moment when, I realized that it is 50-50, right? Which I kind of always thought it was like a little higher on the men in the industry. I think we need to change it because we need to get out there more, and it's a confidence thing. People are camera shy, and people are not maybe the best speaker, but Sakina, who's a good friend of mine, who is the she did this first kind of step of it's education of the younger generation, and getting these students and nurturing and mentoring them, which is something that I really love to do. And so lightication is a huge thing. And already I stay in touch with all my students. They ask me for internships. I think it's bringing them and boosting them up to make them feel like more empowered, right? To be able to speak and to be able to talk and to be able to really, harness their craft. Lighting is amazing and brings so much joy to the world, and nothing is unachievable as a woman, and you don't necessarily have to get your degree. You can work in the field, but just keep at it, and drive is everything.